So, this is exciting to have you guys here from LA.
Yeah.
You guys came all the way from Los Angeles to do, you trekked. Did you guys hitchhike or how did you get here?
Pretty much on the train.
You came on the train. How did you get here?
Drove up. Listened
drove?
to gangster rap the whole time. Also finished up Way of the Superior Man in preparation for this
love
conversation.
that book.
Such a good book.
Yeah.
I've been trying to get that guy on my podcast and he says he's not doing interviews, so
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's pretty elusive.
he's a little elusive these days.
Good for him. I'm in support of that.
That's okay. The book gives us a lot of information. Anyways, that's so great that you were listening to that on the way over here to talk about our masculine, feminine side. So this podcast is about hydration. It's about so much more than that, though, because the Hydrate Life is about the molecules of water in our body and how those are imprinted by every thought we think, every word we say. And so the Hydrate Life is really about everything that we do. And Anna and I are talking so much about just our roles in life and how in work, it's hard to be, even in this world right now, it's hard to know where to show up in our masculine and our feminine and where to find that balance and how to find it. And we're so grateful for the movement that women that have the path they've paved for us in order to have the rights that we have. But also, I feel like we've lost. I'm grieving the loss of being able to be in my feminine fully. A lot of men that I talk to say they're afraid to show up in that full masculine because they don't know how a woman is going to receive it now. And so that's why we want to have you here, Aaron, so that you could give us that
humbled and grateful.
perspective
Yeah.
from a guy.
Where do you feel like you're at with your own relationship to femininity and masculinity within yourself?
Well, that's a good question. I love being in my feminine. I love just surrendering, and I love it when I meet a guy and he's like, yeah, I want to take you here and open my door for me, and just, like I can just be like water and just flow with him, and it feels so good. But in my life right now, I'm a single mom. I run quite a few businesses, so I'm required to show up in a very masculine way and be the leader. And so I think it makes it even more exciting for me when I have the opportunity to show up in my feminine.
It's so beautiful because I feel like you embody such feminine leadership in what you do, because a lot of the decisions you make within your business are so intuitive. And for me, I think, and you do this too, it's funny, we share a CFO, we share a CPA, like that masculine structure, we outsource.
Yeah.
And you have a team that's able to like take on that really like structured, like it's kind of like a relationship. It's like I think running your business is like a microcosm of a relationship, because when I feel safe and supported, then I can just like be in my creative zone and I can flow,
Right.
When it was just me, I didn't have a lot of my creative juice, and I run a creative agency. So it's very important for me to be in that like strategic and like visual design and ideas and all of that. And it's really hard to be in that space. And same with you with creating, right? When you have to worry about the like structure and the push and the force kind of things. And also I think a big part of, to me, one of my definitions of like masculine is like going out and getting things, like hunting for the tiger. And I've never been like that with like sales, right? Or pushing things. Like I've never put $1 into like paid marketing, or I've never been one. I remember before I hired a sales manager, I used to take sales calls and I'd be like, this is what we do. Take it or leave it. I used to never like follow up or call people or have that like that energy of like, let me know what you want, I'd
Yeah.
just be like, what?
Prey drive.
Yeah.
The prey drive.
I wonder, we were talking before with you, Anna, if there's some way to define what it is from another person or from yourself or from your environment that causes you to feel safe enough to be able to express that creative feminine. Is there some
That's
like
a very good
blueprint of
question.
sorts?
Yes, we were talking about this earlier, and I think for me, I was so conditioned, and I've had so many instances of men in my life, so partnerships I've had, or my brother and my dad, who like you can tell viscerally, right? can't hold emotion from women. So like I'm a very emotional being. I'm like when I'm happy, I'm really happy. When I'm sad, I'm really sad. Like, but I've always been with men who like anytime I'd open up a little bit, like you can just tell. It's like what we were talking about earlier. Like it's like this look of like deer in headlights. And as soon as I see that, I'm like, oh shit, I'm not safe or protected, and I don't have that safe space for me to open up. So I'm going to tone this down. And I see femininity. It's like it's a range, right? And if I can't express my sadness, I also can't express my passion. So like my emotions are limited to this. And I think I've spent so much of my life in here. And a big part of that too is like, I think in the one instance where I feel like I've been that close to like men or have been in my previous relationships. And I've always, I think, dated a very similar type of guy where I've never really felt safe to be myself. So that's why this year I went on a full masculine cleanse all of 2020 to really like redefine like the way I see men. And I sourced a lot of men into my life through friendships, through people I work with that like have that safety and are able to really hold that for me. And that's then I'm rewiring my brain because I'm like, oh shit, that exists.
Yeah.
You know, and my emotions can be received by somebody, and like it's too muchness and all of that. So I can really like sit within myself like the best.
What was the consistent trend with the men that you had previously been in pre-2020? Was there like a consistent pattern with the guys?
Yeah, I would say very men that carried the perceived archetype of masculinity, but not the emotional parts of it. Not that emotional like what we're talking about, that sense of like I'm here for you, like the consistency, I'm here for you, I'm open. But it's always been like shutting down, like I don't have time and energy for this. It just that not right now. It's that not right now essence. And that came from, I feel like, how I was raised too. I think the men that I was like my brother and my dad growing up were very like, not right now, you know?
But I'm sure they loved you, and you knew the depth of how much they loved you, or I'm assuming just from the conversations we've had, they just didn't have the capacity to contain that for you. They didn't know how. They didn't have the tools.
Yeah.
And then even the guys that you dated, you felt that love. And that's why it's so hard to leave them sometimes, because we know in the depth of our heart they're loving me as hard as they can. But then we also know that there's something more that we personally need. And then being able to say, I'm not going to settle for good. I need great.
Yeah.
you know?
And that's really hard because it's like thinking of a unicorn. You're like, ooh, I would love a unicorn. But I've never seen a fucking unicorn. Does that exist? Is this in my head? You know? And I think what you just said, the leaving good for great, is like such an investment you make in yourself.
Yeah, I know growing up, my dad loved me so much and we had the most amazing relationship. But also, I was the one that was the container for both of our emotions. Like, he didn't really know how to express his emotions. And talking to my therapist is interesting because she's like, you became a superhuman at understanding people's emotions, feeling their emotions, because as a child, you did that for the family. And same as you, I realized that I kept sourcing the same type of men that were repeating that same type of relationship because it was what I knew. It's like,
it's what you're familiar with.
It's what you're familiar with, right? And you keep repeating that pattern until you realize, like, wait a minute. I don't want, because I was trying to heal the relationship of actually my mom and dad. How my mom was like so passionate, having these different type of emotions, and my dad loved her so much and still does love her, but maybe didn't know how to meet her in that communication of being able to talk through it in a way that she needed. And so I'd watch that and it was like I wanted to heal that. And so then I sourced those kind of relationships myself. I was married for 13 years and it was like I married a similar type of situation where my ex-husband he just didn't have that capacity to meet me in that way, you know? So it's interesting why we keep doing that. But we want to know from you, Aaron, what I have a couple questions. One, if you meet a man like that you feel like it's really hard to connect and draw things out of them, or or even you don't want to spend your energy just keep drawing. You want them to draw stuff out of you. You want it to be this reciprocal kind of situation. Is a man kind of stuck in that? Is that just the way that he is, or
is that how he is with certain people?
Is that how he is with certain people?
I think for me, I'm different with everybody. And so my natural, and by me, I think probably most people, but I can only speak for myself. But the tendency in my own experience would be to balance whatever the pull of the other person may be. So if a person is very feminine and very creative and very nonlinear and throw paint at the wall and show up late and, you know, be kind of maybe a little bit more spontaneous with like their personality and emotions and all that, then I will veer into just being, okay, I will just be like stable anchor, still kind of like stoic.
Yeah.
Whereas if a person's too much that way, or what I perceive to be that, then I'll go more into more feminine,
flowy,
ballistic dance, like ballet, jump on the trampoline, be silly to like lighten the room up. You know, and so I think that the common tendency is most men will lean more towards like more masculine and most women will lean towards more feminine.
Yeah.
But we're always sliding, it's a sliding scale. And so with every person that we're with, we're going to slightly shift to continually find balance. So it's a similar conversation around like finding cellular balance in relation to you know, water in a cell and the intracellular matrix and extracellular and all that.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to find that equilibrium all the time at a cellular level. We're also finding that at a mental emotional level with relationship.
And you know,
That's
what's
so
really
true.
interesting,
That's so true.
Erin, is I've noticed with a few friends of mine that have been in really long-term relationships, like 10 years plus, there's ups and downs of sometimes the female will be more in her feminine and masculine, and they kind of like throughout the years like will flip-flop based on different circumstances in their lives.
What you need in your life in that moment, that minute, that week, that year, that decade.
But what about a man that you feel like, because this is what I feel like I kept sourcing, was men that you could tell like just loved and adored me, but just maybe didn't have the communication skills or the ability. Like they just didn't know how. And I know in the last relationship I was with, the man I was with, it felt like it was too scary as well to even try. It's like, what if I mess up? You know, I don't want to even go there. It's just far too out there for him. So he's just like, this is the way I am. I'm always going to be this way, not willing to even try.
I mean, one, it could just be find someone that's further down that path.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're able to meet at the same place. And then two, as far as coaching a person, like any kind of relationship at all, I think focusing on applauding the things that you value about the person can be very supportive.
Yeah.
You know, so and also you change your own filter of your perception of that person. So you can start to draw this narrative of who people are based off of your own habits in your mind of how you see them.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
And so it's like there's a term called the Pygmalion effect. It's like a term essentially meaning that by us painting our thoughts and ideas and perceptions of a person, we end up invoking those personality types within them. We're almost like projecting it onto them, and then, you know, they end up taking those on. And so, I mean, I think it'd be two things. One, if it's somebody that you want to be with, then I think leaning towards the things that you value and adding momentum to that. And then two, perhaps, you know, someone that is closer to the path that you're on might be a better fit. Would be my perception of it.
Yeah, feels like it. I was talking to our dear friend Lorelai the other day, and she was saying that it's difficult because right now in this world, it feels like the men that we've been meeting have a hard time being that container, being in their full masculine, because women have become like for example, we're the breadwinner now. We can do it all, you know, making the money, going. It's confusing, right? And also we're really realizing maybe we don't want to do it all. We want to know that we can, but how do you really work a full-time job, be this epic mom, be this epic wife, keep your body in shape, like have this full balance and do all of those things, it's almost nearly impossible. You can't do all of the things and do all of them with excellence.
I think you could be, by leaning more into, I mean, it just depends what you want. Maybe it seems like you want a masculine man, but you might want some other person might want a feminine man, and if you lead with more masculine traits, then you'll find naturally that the people that will be drawn to you would be more feminine. But I think that by introducing, even if you have to run your business and you have to be the breadwinner, by introducing feminine characteristics in your life, like you do with music and with dance, and having the trampoline around, and painting and colors, and being around ocean, like all of those are little like feminine injections. So by making sure that if your common bias would be to go towards masculinity, just because that's been the nature of your life, you might have to, and you want a masculine guy, you might have to go out of your way to start to inject some feminine practices throughout your day. And then I think that could be a way to kind of find some balance with that. You know what I'm saying?
I think you nailed it. I think for me, because you do need to have like a sharp level of masculinity to like run businesses like Tracy and I run, right? So I know, and even though like I'm not dating anybody right now, but when I'm done with work, I want to be more in my inherent energy, which is my femininity. So when I'm done, the things that I like need to take a bubble bath, I need to take a massage, I need to go do like dance at the beach, or things that get me into my body and out of my head, but because that I feel like neutralizes my energy to get me back to where I'm supposed to be. But it is tough when you're managing that, because the last person I was dating, I used to have these long work days, and I'd be like, I don't really want to be in his energy right now,
Why didn't you want to be in his energy?
Because I felt like I was still holding on to so much of my go energy from the day that I couldn't really like get back into my softness.
But do you guys both feel that there has been a shift in the last, I don't know how many years, but a shift where there's confusion of how to balance that masculine and feminine energy, and it feels like there's a little bit of dissonance or imbalance in even our culture. And I don't know, do you guys see that, or is that only my perception?
Well, I think there's been things like the pendulum swings back and forth, and so there's been a lot of hate on the patriarchy.
Yeah,
and
right.
so then it's like, then all the feminist ideologies start coming in, and I think in large part, a lot of what people that are staunch feminists, the things that they stand for, actually, for a good chunk of women, would go against what they actually really deeply want at a subconscious level.
Right.
And so I've never been with a woman personally that doesn't like feeling, almost like, this is not the right word, but like being able to surrender, I think is a big thing.
That's a good word.
And so surrender, well, I was going to say submit was the word that I was going to,
Are you using biblical terms that people might?
so I'm like, what's a softer version of that?
He's going to go to the slaughter.
But submit too, I think that's a fine one too. That was the first one that came to mind. But surrender.
Yeah, we get what you're saying.
Yeah. And so that's, but I think culturally, the idea of surrendering can seem weak, but in fact, it's actually very strong.
Right.
And to give the spaciousness for a man to feel as though like, wow, like I am the man, and you are the soft, delicate flower that I take care of. Right. Like that's what a man wants to do.
Do they? That's inherently what they want to do.
That's what I want to do. Yeah.
Yeah, and most men that is that what?
Yeah, I would
like
say
likely
some obscure statistic, probably 90% of men I would think would be in that case. Any guy that I hang out with, obviously I'm in my own echo chamber and bias of people that resonate with me.
Yeah.
But yeah, men want to feel strong, men want to feel empowered, men want to feel like a leader. And if a woman is, far down that spectrum where they really, they got their hands on the wheel, that can be intimidating for a guy.
And I think it's a delicate balance too, because earlier this year when I went through my breakup, I worked with my coach Stefano Sidnos, who's amazing. He's a feminine masculine dynamic expert, and he told me, he was like, because my nervous system after getting out of a 4-year relationship was like so shot because I didn't feel safe. So this has nothing to do with whether or not I was happy in that relationship, but I did not feel safe because now I was alone, right? So what Steph kind of coached me on was, he was like, I want you to reestablish your own masculine, and not in the way that you're saying like, I'm a strong independent woman that don't need no man kind of thing, but I can give safety to myself, right? I can. And one of the things, you guys both know this about me, is I'm like late to a lot of things, and I'm very like, I have little to no structure. So Steph told me, was like, infuse a little bit of that trust into yourself. That'll make your nervous system feel more calm and relaxed, but still balance it out and know that when you're ready to be in a relationship, like, you can still receive. You can still receive and be taken care of, but that's like icing on the cake. And one of my favorite things you've ever told me is like, I think in your singledom, like, kind of as a woman, it's tough because you want to provide for yourself, but you don't want it to, you want to provide for yourself, but at the same time, I'm even battling with this as I'm saying it, because I'm like, what is right? Because to me, mentally, there's so much shame around like being too powerful or doing too much, because I'm like, all right, whenever I am ready to start dating again, I feel like that energy is super intimidating, and that's not really open, So it's about finding, I think, safety and being able to build the life that you want to live, and like love yourself fully and trust yourself fully and find that safety alone. And then when you are able to like co-create with somebody else, that's like icing on the cake to like a life that's already so beautiful and abundant. But that comes down to being able to receive it as well.
But if you're able to find balance, going back to like the masculine, feminine story, like that, like using that as kind of like an analogy, if you're able to find that balance within yourself, then naturally your balanced partner would just be balanced within themselves. So there's no like right or wrong with any of the stuff. It's just eventually finding acceptance for you, feeling balanced, like, okay, like this is me. I'm very feminine. It's great. Or I'm very masculine, or I'm really kind of sliding like 50-50. And then within that, it's being open to accepting yourself, and then also opening to that, continuing that balance with another person. So if you're really feminine, naturally you're going to find very masculine. But if you are a balanced person, then you just find another balanced person. That's okay. Like, you don't need to be really feminine if you're a girl, and you don't need a super masculine person.
It can be there can be that polarity between two well-balanced people, you're saying, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like you don't need to play down your badassery with business stuff or being like an empowered human being. I think you finding the balance within yourself will just open you up to finding a more balanced person, and that will be, you guys could walk together in that way.
Thank you. I needed to hear that, because I always tone that part of me down, because I'm like, I don't want that to come off as too much, or like with that, like, I don't know.
But then if you tone that part of you down, then you'd be playing small, or playing against what feels naturally organic to you, which could work for a little while, but you're sending...
It's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable, because you're sending incorrect signals out.
Yeah.
So now you're sending these signals out for a person that would match that balance, and they're like, oh yeah, that's me, that fits. So they come in, you ride that for a little bit, but eventually you go back to what organically feels best for you, and they're like, wait, that's not what I bought.
Yeah.
So the sooner that you can be honest and authentic with where you're at, the sooner you start to filter out all of the BS, and then something meaningful can actually come in.
Yeah. And that's, Tracy and I were kind of chatting about that earlier today too. And I think this goes for like men or women. It's really important to calibrate to your own authentic energy in any way, right?
Yeah.
Your personality, your strengths, like the way you show up on your own, and really live and embody that before you and be strong in that, right? Before you then decide to like start dating, because then that whole analogy that you just brought up will happen, right? You show up as the kind of person that you think the other person wants you to be, without leading with your own energy, because that's not sustainable.
What's most important to you?
Being in your own energy, because it's all about, this is something I'm really learning this year, and this applies not just to like dating or relationships, but friendships, everything, right? It's not about the other person. So I can look at Tracy as a girlfriend, right? She checks all these boxes as like somebody I like being around. But at the end of the day, we have such a powerful relationship because she brings out the best of me. I feel like I'm activated as fuck when I'm around you, right? So that essence to me is so much more important than like somebody checks these boxes. So I think in a relationship, that's the opposite. If you're showing up as a different version of yourself, because that's not lighting yourself up. That's not energizing you. That's the opposite of that. So I think, so to answer your question, I think being like owning who you are authentically and then naturally attracting people that like that light up around you and lean into that, I think is really important.
Is there any way to describe what it is about Tracy that lights you up?
Yeah, Lorelai and I were actually talking about this. I think Tracy and I bounce off of each other really well. I think more than anything, anytime I've ever asked you permission for something as a friend, I'm like, oh, do you like, you're always like, Anna, I fucking love that shit. Yeah, keep it going. She indulges in me. She indulges in me, and then I indulge in her. Like, Tracy is such a beautiful, like, mentor, teacher, coach archetype. She's an educator, you know? She loves that, and I'm like that's how, like, my dad was growing up. I'd be like, Dad, why is the sky blue? Dad's like, da-da-da. So, like, I feed off of that with Tracy, and then there's certain things about me that Tracy feeds off of as well. And I think we play that balance off really well.
Yeah, definitely. I like what you said, Anna, about being with somebody that brings out the best in you, you know, where you feel like you're your best version of your own self. And not that you're depending on somebody for anything. You're yourself, but because everything's our own perception, right, too. It's the way we see it. But when you're around somebody, how it makes you come alive. I love being around people that I feel alive around. Do you ever feel like, both of you guys, when you're in someone's energy field, you either feel alive or maybe your energy field crashes? Do you ever feel that way?
Oh,
and
yeah,
you're
I'll get like headaches.
Yeah, and I don't even know why, because it's not even something they said.
And you want to like the person too.
You want to like them. They check the boxes of like, this is a cool person. They're really fun and smart and funny or whatever. And your energy field's crashed. After they leave, you're just like, oh, so tired. And it's not that you dislike them or anything, but they didn't bring out the best in you.
Yeah.
Not that it was their responsibility, but there was some dissonance. There wasn't this coherence inside of the field.
Yes. And what you're describing is Tracy is a highly intuitive person, right? And I think that came down to what you're just sharing about needing to play that role growing up, like with your father and everything. But that intuition, I think, is one of the biggest parts of femininity. And it's funny now because even I think my whole life I used to meet people and like I think initially I wouldn't like them. That was my gut feeling. But I'd be like, no, you're being a dick. Like, this person's cool. They're great. Like, blah, blah, blah. Give them a chance.
Why don't I like them?
Why don't I like them? Right. Or the other way around, like almost like life. I've always been like a love at first sight person. And I've always wanted that. But in my mind, I'm like, I know so many people that have been in relationships that they kind of had to like break through a hurdle at the beginning, you know? But I think when it comes down to it, that's when you get in your head. Yeah. Right? When you question things, that's a really logical thing. So something I've really been trying to do like the last couple of years is follow my gut more. And I even like use that in my business too. When I hire people, when I make decisions, sometimes it doesn't make sense, but it feels right. And I'm like, this is how I'm going to flow with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that's been my thing this last year, is like, just trust yourself, you know, because I think ultimately everything in nature starts with sound, with vibration. And if there's dissonance in the field, us as animals or mammals, we can sense if there's dissonance in the field. But then our head gets too much into it and we start trying to break it apart and understand it, intellectualize it, or, you know, think. I know for myself, I was questioned like, oh, maybe I'm just not seeing this properly. Maybe I'm misunderstanding something, which could totally be the case. But I think, first of all, we can also feel like something feels off. And it's not for me to try to figure it out or say it's right or it's wrong or anything like that. It just feels off, and that's okay. And it's okay to take a step back, because if it is right, it will find its way back into alignment with me.
Yeah, and it's okay to be structured and analytical and create a narrative, and have directionality. That would be the, following the same masculine feminine diagram.
See, that's where I like a man to come into my life.
Right?
To be that intellectual piece. I love like the pillow talk, bouncing things off. I'm like, I'm feeling this way, but what do you think? And it just feels so
the two-way
good.
indulgence in that too, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like guys too, they love when we bring the other perspective, right?
Yeah.
The intuition. Yeah. So I think that softens men up a little bit as well, right?
And to have a relationship where a man really respects your intuition and we respect his intellectual
instead of the
Yeah.
two of those butting heads, because I see that happen a lot too.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love it when they come in. I love to be able to just say, hey, I'm thinking this or feeling this. Like, what do you think? And really to have that container, that space where he's like, okay, here's what I see. Here are the four walls.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I can play within these four walls. Like, figure it out.
And I think so much of that too comes to communication, because Alison Armstrong always talks about this. Because like as girls, like, if I've had like a tough day or I have something I want to talk to you about, sometimes I just want to like dump it all out and just have somebody listen to me, right?
Yeah.
But men, when you talk about things like that, it's always like, okay, this is how we're going to fix it, like blah,
Right.
blah, blah,
Doesn't
blah.
need to
And
be
that's not always received.
Yeah.
So I think that comes to the communication piece of like, hey, I just really need to vent to you for a second. Or
Yes.
or versus, what should I do? Because so many instances with either guys I'm dating or even guy friends, I'll like vent to them and they'll like tell me what to do, and I'll be like, dope, like thanks, and then I don't do it, which is like a slap in the face.
Yeah.
But also I didn't ask for your opinion, So
that's a really great point that you brought up. When we go to a man, you tell us if this is helpful, to be able to do what Anna said, to be able to say, hey, I'm really struggling with this. Would you just be a safe place for me to vent? Or, hey, I'm really struggling with this and I need some advice. Does that help if we...
What, specifying so I don't force advice upon you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so, for sure.
Yeah.
And then you could also be in the same way that the masculine mind could be tolerant of the reality that the female, or the feminine in this case, just wants to communicate and nothing be fixed. Mm-hmm. The feminine can also be tolerant of the reality that many masculine minds are such that they want to fix it. So it's like, again, having the empathy for both sides and seeing like, okay, you're trying to fix it because you love me.
Yeah.
So that's like it's kind of like being someone trying to convert you to their religion or their dietary dogma or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Instead of coming from a place of like, screw you, get away from me, why are you trying to change me? I kind of try to reframe that in my mind of like, okay, like you're doing this because you care. How sweet, I love you.
Right. Yes, okay.
So both sides can have that understanding.
Yeah.
Instead of having, a kernel of frustration on this side and a kernel of frustration on this side and kind of burrowing together.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Like when you care so much and you see your woman hurting, it's like you can't help but want to fix it, right?
Yeah, you want to fix it. And you can turn that down.
You don't like to see them hurting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, but ultimately I think it's like, by creating resistance on either side, the walls will go up.
Yeah.
So trying to put, as the female, trying to put your masculine cap on for a moment and be like, okay, like I see what you're doing and I love you for it.
Right.
And then as the man, being able to put the feminine cap on and being like, okay, I see that you don't need anything fixed and you just want to ooze,
right.
and I love you for it.
Yeah. Totally. That's like the book, whatever. I've never read it, but I always hear men are from Mars, women are from Venus, whatever. We do think so differently, and to be able to take into consideration, hey, we don't usually think the same. Our brains are not wired the same. So to have that appreciation for when a man wants to fix it, not get upset, but be like, okay, I get it.
The world would be so sad and vanilla if men and women were the same.
Oh, yeah, it'd be boring.
It wouldn't work out.
It'd be boring, yeah.
And so it's an interesting thing to like have like the fight for like sameness in every way, which I think can be confusing. And this gets into sensitive territory of like the idea of like, I think it's really admirable for a woman to want to be a nurturing mother and take care of a home and be a great listener and be receptive and, you know, have all of those feminine qualities that are just so incredibly valuable for the evolution of the species.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
And if everyone leaves that role because all of a sudden culturally we poo-poo on that role because it's like weak,
it's not cool
we're all
enough
fucked.
anymore. Yeah, totally. No, I agree. And that's why it brings us back to the original thing that we were talking about, where it's like we want it all, but really, can we do it all with excellence? You know, can we be that amazing mom at home and running a full-time business as a CEO or multiple businesses, being the breadwinner, having the perfect body, having the perfect health, having our spiritual life in alignment? Like, how do we do all of that with excellence?
You might not be able to, you might have to choose.
Right. And
Like,
that's,
what do you really care about?
and that's where I think going back to that masculine, feminine, like originally we had those archetypes where it's like, okay, the man's the hunter, the female's back at home nurturing. There is a part of that I mourn and miss a little bit. I love being an entrepreneur. I love being a creative. I love doing that. It would be hard for me just to be at home and be a mom. But also I want to be able to flow a little bit and find a balance where it's not that I'm doing it all, like all the pressures on me. I think, and that's where it would be nice to have a partner where we can flow together, you know, and find that somehow. I don't know. I think taking those old archetypes and making them new, but in a way that in nature, you're always going to see there's male and female. You look around nature and it's just the way that it is, masculine, feminine, and being able to honor that. And not be upset with it and say like, well, I want to do it all. I want to be the masculine and the feminine. I'm not a hermaphrodite, you know. I can't do it all. So to be able to honor that masculine and within myself and the feminine within myself, but also honor the masculine in that male relationship and really appreciate it and go, you know what, you know, I probably could do this, but not as well as you. And so I appreciate that you're helping me. Like last night, Anna and I came home and there was literally a crate in front of our house. Like, okay, I had ordered like 1,000 bottles of Quinton or whatever. And the UPS driver dropped off a crate. We're like, what the hell did we do with this crate? You know, it's like shrink wrapped and built in, and we were like, how do we get these boxes out of here, you know? And this is where we said it would be really nice to have a really strong guy to come.
This would be a good instance.
Yeah, to come by and be like, help us with it, right? But then I went and got the hammer and started just banging it, and we did it. Like, we broke it apart and got the boxes up. We did it. But it would have been so nice to just watch a guy being as masculine and do that.
Yeah.
You know?
And guys
and
are
stand by and admire it and like help him with the little things. But like in those moments, like I love that. I love being able to appreciate that. And yeah, I know I can do it, but I don't want to do it.
I personally I feel like the best version of myself comes out when I have something to take care of or someone to take care of.
Yeah.
And so in that instance where, you know, there's a spider or you need to move a fridge or hack away, whatever, it's not a chore for probably most men, or it's not a chore for me. It literally is like it fills me up with purpose.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's like, for just speaking for myself, that's like one of the most important things for my life force is actually having something to take care of. And what if I don't have something to take care of, be a custodian of, you know, something that's beyond just myself, I can get kind of like despondent in a way.
Yeah, and I've noticed with some girlfriends, it's really hard for them to receive. It's really hard to like receive and ask for help and things like that. But you're right, like I've witnessed that so much. Like men love that. You know, otherwise you're like creating like a separation. And that's like a lack of intimacy too, I think.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's so interesting because I think you're right, Erin. It's like the men, they want to have that responsibility. They feel like they're taking care of something, but also it can get taken for granted. Like you know, if you came and broke that crate down for us, we would have been clapping and cheering and so grateful, right? But say you came every day that crate came, right? And then you went out and did it. By the 100th day, we might just be expecting it. Like, hey, Aaron's going to do that, whatever. I'm going to go up here and do this.
Unless the poles were imbalanced and I was in need of some fulfillment of my own masculinity. So if I was already overdrive on running all the whole masculine ship, I'd be like, not another box. But if I'm in a place where I could use a little masculine juice, I'm just waiting for a spider to come.
You're waiting for it to come. Yeah.
Waiting for a spider.
But I noticed, like, I've talked to men, and it's like, okay, say the 100th day that crate comes and we're not clapping and cheering. It's kind of like you'll notice, like, I'll notice that women will be telling their husbands, hey, this faucet's leaky. And the husband's like, yeah, I'll get to it. But then the neighbor's like, hey, my faucet's leaky. And he runs right over, helps. But why? What's the difference? Because if he fixes the faucet for his wife, she's just going to be like, thank God you got that done. You needed to do that a month ago. The neighbor's going to be like, oh my gosh, you're so amazing. Thank you so much. Right. And that's where I think that appreciation can never end. No matter how long you've been married, no matter if that crate came for the 100th day. No matter if your husband takes the trash out every single day.
You're so good at that. You're so good. I witness you do that so much to me and to other people, always just expressing gratitude and appreciation for like every little thing.
Oh, thank you.
Well, that was the original thing before, is like, if you want to invest in nurturing a relationship, leading from what they're doing that you appreciate is just a great way to live your life. Including with yourself, your relationship with yourself. Like,
absolutely,
most of us have 99 reasons that they suck, and then every now and again you're like, oh, that was kind of cool. And so if we can flip that of like, what are the 99 reasons that I'm doing a great job, and also being honest with critiquing myself where I'm not. But I think it's like the software that we're running for the most part is coming from a place of what we're doing wrong. And at the end of your life, and the end of my life, I just would rather that not be the software that I was running. Like, why not live life through the lens of what's happening that's right?
Yeah, that's so true. And so here's a question. What if you are with somebody that can only take the positive? Like, it's just like, okay, just tell me how great I'm doing all the time. And then you say one thing that like, hey, can we work on this? And they can't receive that.
They probably need to grow up.
Because that's like a very frustrating relationship where you're like, okay, but we need to be able to have like, yes, I want to tell you how amazing you are all the time.
Well, typically most times you can say what's going on that's wrong through a positive lens.
This is true.
By you verbalizing all the things that are going right. You can kind of navigate that if you're tactful with your words of what's also going wrong.
Yeah, the compliment sandwich.
The compliment 100%. Sandwich. Yeah. No, that's so true. Yes. Everything is delivery, right? Like if someone just comes to you and said to me like, Tracy, you suck at this, you need to work at it. Whoa. Yeah. It's going to be hard to receive.
So John Gray, the Men Are From Venus, Women Are From Mars guy, he wrote like a version 2 of it. Like revisited. It was a couple years ago, and it's basically the same premise as the first one, except for he brings in a lot of the more modern dynamics, right, with women being the breadwinners and yada yada. And that's one of the things he really spoke about, was the way that you speak to these things about men, and what men they it's almost like coaches and teams. It's all about, it's the positive reinforcement, instead of as much the negative.
Totally. I mean, we thrive off of that. You and I were having that conversation today, Anna, about how it feels so good when someone hopes the best in you and they look at your character and they hope the best. It makes you want to be the best. Yeah. And I was telling Anna that, like, when I was growing up, my father, especially, and my mom, they just seemed to always hope the best. If I messed up, it was like, I know that your intentions were good, and here's how we can improve this area, but I believe in you as a person. And, like, they always stuck to my character. This is who Tracy is. And that really shaped who I was and how I showed up in relationships, because now I can look at people's character and go, that's not them. Like, that's just, we all mess up. I know this person, I know their character, and I know they want the best. And when we believe the best, we pull the best out of them. Yeah, absolutely. it's because they want to be the best, because they're like, oh my gosh, they believe this in me. I want to be that for them, you know? And so it's beautiful all around. It makes everybody a better person.
Do you know the story of Pygmalion, the Pygmalion effect thing that I mentioned?
I've heard of it, but share it, please.
I probably am going to butcher it, but so Pygmalion was, it's an old like Greek mythological tale, and Pygmalion was a sculptor. And so he was sculpting this beautiful woman out of, I think it was marble. And on there's a specific Greek holiday where they can ask the goddess for one wish. And I'm kind of piecing some of this together, so check it out, but it's pretty much correct. And so Pygmalion goes to the goddess and asks for the one wish, and he has to create a woman in the light of his sculpture that he created. So he was like sculpting this perfect woman. And then the goddess says, okay, cool, you got it. And then he comes back and his sculpture comes to life. And so he's been spending all this time investing into sculpting the angles and the characteristics and all that in the sculpture, and eventually it comes to life. And so that's what we're doing with each other.
It is.
You know, and so that's when you're with someone that does see the best in you, it's as though they can almost kind of like Michelangelo, sculpt away some of the nonsense and bring that out, because they can see maybe addictions or patterns that aren't serving you. They can like see down to the root.
Yeah.
Or they might see the smaller version of you. We're always. It's why I think it's very important. You become the product of the 5 people you spend most time with. Like, it's very important to choose the people you spend time with wisely. And perhaps one of the more important things than anything isn't that they have a lot of money or a lot of power or a lot of, whatever. It perhaps could be that at least you have a good chunk of friends that see, your highest self.
Those are the people I love to be around, that see things in me that I've never even seen in myself.
Yeah.
Like, you're really good at that, Anna. You see things in me that I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't even see that about myself, And it's like, wow, I kind of am like that. But it is so fun to be around people that see your higher self, and then it makes you keep striving, like, yes, that is in me, isn't it? I didn't even notice that, and I want to keep refining that.
It's like you have a form of amnesia.
Yeah, you want to keep building it, and then it's like a muscle. You want to keep building it once you know it's there. Oh, I have this bicep, like we didn't know we had biceps when we were 2 years old. What's a bicep? You have no idea. You're just lifting things and you're not aware. You don't have the awareness. But once you realize the awareness of it, you're like, I want to kind of work on
Yeah, and there is a differentiation between that, like seeing the best in someone versus wishing for the best out of someone.
Yes.
Because I've done that.
Gosh.
I've done that
Yes.
a lot in relationships too, when I'm like, oh, I see the potential in this guy, and that's not him inherently. And he will never be that person. Right?
That is such a good point to bring up, because someone mentioned this to me before. They said, don't marry someone for their potential. Marry them for who they are right now, or love this person or be with this person for who they are, not expecting them to change. Yeah. So there is a distinction in that, not hoping, okay, I see this in this person and they're going to be this someday, but relishing in everything that they are right now.
Yeah,
oh my gosh, I see who you are.
Or
You're
their
so amazing.
inherent energy, which is
Yeah.
super palpable, right? Like who they are at their core
Yep.
versus like certain accomplishments or things that you feel like they'll grow into. So I think it's about kind of figuring out what that is. When you look at other people, like, all right, is this something that's really them, or is this something I'm projecting onto them that I want them to step up to become?
And that goes back to character, because it's looking at their inherent the character of the person, not, oh, this person's so good at this, maybe they'll evolve to this position or this whatever. Maybe
and even as you're saying that, Trace, it's like the former sounds like a very intuitive thing, and the latter just is a very like logical. It's like cerebral, right?
Yeah, it's true.
Then it could perhaps get kind of funny when you've grown accustomed to being kind of formed by people in a certain way, and it might not necessarily be like your most self-actualized, highest expression of you. Maybe, you're raised with a father or mother or whatever family origins that was, they didn't see that in you.
Yeah.
And now perhaps you're only comfortable with people that actually see you as being kind of a piece of shit.
Interesting.
And if someone sees you as like, no, I see your potential, that could be really scary.
Hard for them to receive.
Wow.
So being
I
able to
never
step
even
back
thought about that.
and start to I guess, present the option or opportunity to take responsibility for the relationships in your life, because I think almost definitely you are creating them.
Yeah.
You know, so if there's people in your life that's like, oh, like that person, it's like, well, they're my manifestation. You know, so winding it back and saying like, okay, like what, how do I see myself? You know, and from there, people will start to surround and resonate with that.
Aaron, going full circle too, kind of going back to what Tracy was saying about like kind of attracting the same archetype, a guy or girl that you're dating. Like, okay, I keep attracting unavailable. This is what I recognize, and I think this resonates with Tracy too. Keep attracting unavailable guys. That was because I recognized that I was
Emotionally
unavailable myself, even though I pointed the finger. It's so easy to point the finger on somebody else, but like you're the common denominator. You are the one that attracts people into your life. So if you're consistently attracting the same type of person, then that's like to take a moment of reflection and be like, okay, what is it about me that's attracting these people? Why am I receiving from these people? You know, it's because it's what you're subconsciously attracting or attracted to.
Yeah, I love that word, responsibility. I used to be so frustrated with this really long-term relationship that I was in, because I was like, this person has no desire to see me. And it was so painful and so hurtful. But then when I really did some inner work, I realized I met this person at such a young age that I wasn't ready to be seen then. And that was why I drew that person into my life, because it felt safe that he didn't see me fully and didn't want to see me. But eventually when I wanted to be seen and was begging to be seen, he still didn't want to see me, but it was the same person. I just changed and wanted to be seen,
and
right?
That's what happened.
But then, you get so frustrated because it's like, well, why don't you see me?
And then you can also have compassion for yourself for being afraid to be seen, and acknowledge that as being just a survival mechanism that has served you, because you're still here and you're still alive.
Yay!
You did it.
Thank God I made it this far.
Yeah. And then within that, it's like the old story with the guy that needs to get across a river, and then he builds a raft, and then he takes the raft across the river, and then he loves the raft so much that he drags it through the woods for the next 10 years or whatever. Acknowledging and loving those parts of yourself and those patterns, those survival mechanisms for what they were.
Yeah.
And then also, I think through having that compassion and appreciation of them, I think that allows the spaciousness to actually drop them.
Yeah.
Whereas I think another approach could be one of like pushing away and creating resistance and like chopping and cutting and dismissing.
Yeah.
For me personally, I appreciate the approach of just saying thanks.
Yeah.
And it's like, and this is the thing with body work. If someone has some type of muscle that's spasming or hypertonic, really tight, whatever it is, you could actually take them deeper into that pattern, and then from there, because you're holding that pattern for them, their nervous system says, oh, okay, it's safe to let go because someone else is holding it. So it's almost like, instead of me saying, oh, you have, hyperkyphosis or what have you, instead of me saying like, that sucks, your spine's shitty, we gotta like get it straight, I say, what if I help and support you to go deeper into that pattern, and I'll love that pattern essentially. And then your nervous system says, oh, okay, cool, like, it's okay. And then from there you can start to kind of
I feel like you did that to me the other day.
Yeah, that's the way that I do it. And then there's also space to go right against the pattern. So that's like the life dance is when do I
to do that.
Yeah.
Well, I noticed, like instead of, because I can go into modes of being like really frustrated, where it's like, why did you not want to see me? Like, what was it? Because that's the painful part. Like, what was it about me that you didn't want to see? Why is someone that I loved so much couldn't see me? And then, but when I go into the space of being grateful, because I needed that lesson, and then it transmutes the whole thing. It's like that transmutation is able to take place when you can just say, I don't understand it, but I'm thankful for the fact that that happened because it needed to take place, and it couldn't have happened any other way because it didn't. It didn't, and so it couldn't have, and this is exactly the way it needed to be. And just surrendering and trusting that, which is so hard.
And then also being okay with not being completely, perfectly spiritually bypassed and composed and grateful and all that, and being okay with just surrendering and being a complete fucking wreck.
Yeah.
Because that's fine too.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't, maybe it's like if it's really hard to find gratitude for a thing, it's like maybe it's okay to go deeper into that pattern to allow the kind of the nut to crack. And then you can start to come out and be like, oh, wow, I am grateful for that. You know, but I think eventually, ideally, a healed personality would come to a point where they can find gratitude for every square centimeter of their lives and their past and their future and their present, all that. And within that journey, there could be time that you're a complete fucking wreck.
Yeah.
And that's great.
Oh, I've been there. I've been there. You know, but it's interesting because you're right, being able to surrender to that complete wreck that you are, and saying this is okay too. Like, this is a part of the process of healing, and I'm going to allow myself to be angry. I'm going to allow myself to be really sad. I'm going to allow myself to feel all of these emotions. I think the hard part with healing, I don't know if you guys feel this way, but maybe it's because, like, relationships are so different, but depending on, like, how long the relationship was and how young you were when you met somebody, that can play a big part in, like, the development of your brain and, you know, how you feel about certain things. But to be able to heal from a relationship where that person had such a big part of your life and just walk away like that never happened, that's very difficult. You know, it's difficult to just be like, okay, this didn't happen. It wasn't there. You know,
I always just pretend they died.
I know. I've thought of that before. Having a funeral.
It's actually the best I got.
Have a funeral for them. They died. This is really sad. So you can't really do that when you have children with somebody. It's just not possible. You can look at the corpse all the time. Like, they died. You're at the funeral. Like, you get to see the corpse like twice a week. You're like, hey, corpse.
That's always what it is. Just negotiating stories inside of your mind.
You are so right about that. And what narrative are you going to choose? You know, that's the battle of the mind, is choosing the narrative. You know, I realize that.
And even the battle is a story.
Yeah, totally. Like, okay, what's the story that we're choosing?
So if you choose subconsciously, consciously, whatever, that is the battle of the mind, then that from that point you're creating the foundation of, okay, here's the war. And so, like, I think just language is so interesting how that is. It's we're continually, you know, casting spells on ourselves. We're like forming our minds and our worlds based off of the words that we speak.
Yep.
You know, in the Bible, it's like first there was the Word. Is that how it goes?
In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was God.
Yeah.
There's
Which I would
nothing
take that
without
as
the
to
Word.
be allegory for like this conversation, but perhaps it was literal. You know, whatever.
Well, the Word is vibration. And in physics, we can't have light without vibration, then we can't have matter without vibration. So everything you think about it was the Word. It was the spoken word, that vibration of the Word.
Yeah. Everything starts off as an idea or as a word, or, you know, and then eventually it comes out, and then you crystallize it onto paper, you know, and then you make a diorama, you know, and then you start calling people and they get involved. But it all started with that root of just this little, you know, a few synapses going.
Yeah,
you know,
that's the way those line bands started, right? You're like, you're in a line band.
That's how everything starts. Yeah, I mean, the book, it's a weird thing doing a book and having, you know, seeing like your whole history coming up to that point that you hold it. You're like, wow, it's like
to have it in your hand,
crystallizing, you know, all of this journey for the last, you know, whatever time frame, depending upon.
And then other people
who's writing the book.
are reading the book now, and that's crystallizing in their brain and becoming.
And then within that, it's not the author's book anymore. As soon as that's your collection of stories goes into your hands. Now it's your story. So the author doesn't have ownership on it anymore. So when you read the book, it's a completely different book.
Yeah.
When Anna reads the book, it's a completely different book.
Right.
And when you read the book at different stages in your life.
Completely
It's a
different book.
Yeah, totally. That's the way, it's interesting. That's what they say the Bible is, it's like always a different book because it's a living, breathing, the living God.
That's the nature of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or perception,
And that's if you could get that idea. That's why psychedelics are so interesting, and I think such or meditation or chanting or maybe some kind of like tantric ceremonies or anything that gets you out of your analytical mind, because eventually the analytical mind gets very stuffy, and so you're essentially convincing yourself that everything is static. And so you're continually, just to make you feel more comfortable with your reality. Because if everything was a bunch of empty space and, neurons and protons and fusion and fission and explosions, and, it would be like, oh my God, like it would be too much to handle.
Scary, yeah.
Or even if you were able to remember even like a small fraction of the events that take place throughout the day, it would be terrible.
Yeah.
So if you actually could remember everything that happened in a single day, you'd be a wreck.
Yeah.
So your mind is continually just, it's like an interpretation machine. It's trying to create, in our eyes, there's empty space in the middle. And so they literally, our brain, it flips the image upside down. It fills that space inside.
That's a really good point to bring back to communication, because all of us sitting here having this conversation right now, if we go talk about it a week from now, you're going to have a different perspective of it. You're going to have a different perspective. You said this, you said that, you pulled different things out, I pulled different things out. And our perspective is not all going to be the same. And so in relationships, I think that's one of the most powerful things, the most powerful tools we have is to recognize that there's your side of the story, there's my side of the story, and then there's the truth of what actually happened. But we're going to see it different. And to really just be able to be okay with that person's perception, for that person to be okay with my perception, and to say, oh, that's so interesting. You saw that was the color blue that day, and I saw it as red. But that's okay. No one's right. Like, we have to let go. The ego has to let go. No, that was definitely red. No, that was definitely blue, And it's like we get so caught in somatics. And to be able, like, wouldn't the world be so beautiful? It's like, really? You saw that as red? Tell me about it. I want to understand that better.
Well, that's what kids do really well. And that's why, like in reference to all the different ceremonies that people have access to get out of that pragmatic analytical mind, you're essentially going back to a child's mind, or like a really old person's mind, because they kind of are similar, where you start seeing the magic again because I only have a year left.
Right.
And so within that, I think you can tap into that in relationship of any sort, including with yourself or your kids or your business or your partner or just life.
Yeah.
Being able to wind back into that magic of like, I have no idea what the hell is going on here.
And then life gets juicy again.
And then it gets juicy.
It gets super juicy then, because you're just like, it's not about holding on to this, I don't want to, like, rigidity, the rigidity of like, no, this is the way it is. It is definitely this way.
But a little bit of that is quite fine. So you want to have both. So if I'm too feminine, psychedelic, throw paint on the wall, patch pant, dreadlock guy, that I really need.
What was that word?
We probably wouldn't have you sitting here if you're the patch pant dreadlock guy. Even though we love those guys,
We call them Bali boys.
Bali boys.
Bali boys, like Venice.
Yeah. So the Bali boy typically is going to have problems getting things going, but they have a lot of value. So they're occupying more that feminine role. And it's great. It just might not be that attractive to a woman that's seeking more of like a masculine type archetype person.
Right.
But it's not bad or good. They're just an expression of that. And they're the perfect fit for something else that's not, you two.
Mm-hmm. It's a good point. There's a perfect fit for everybody.
They're a perfect fit. It's all part of the soup, or they wouldn't be here.
No, they're a part of the puzzle.
But we're always trying to define how other people suck or where they fit or where they don't fit. But
Yeah.
every time that I make the choice that someone is bad or put some kind of moralistic judgment on them, I'm inherently saying that I am good. And so the more insecure that I am, the greater the tendency of me talking shit on other people is. Whereas if I'm completely comfortable with this, and I don't need to create any of those moralistic bad good, setting it's all
Creating
it's all
the
it's all the
idea of
pole stuff.
separation. It's the idea of separation.
Yeah.
You're over there, I'm over here.
Yeah. So eventually, I think ideally, I'd like to arrive in a place where I don't have any judgment of anybody else because I'm so comfortable in myself.
Yeah.
But anytime I do have that judgment pop up, to me, I just see it as like, okay, there's something in me that needs to be validated.
So do you ask yourself that question? What needs to be validated?
Do I ask myself what needs to be validated? I don't ask myself exactly that question, but now I am. What needs to be validated? I think for me, are you asking?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, my validation comes from having a role is a big thing for me. So if I feel like I like to feel like a tool in a way. And so if I feel like my tool is functioning well, and this could be just like topical ego layer. In fact, it absolutely is. But if I don't feel like I have a function or a purpose in a situation, then I'll start to kind of feel this interesting, like apathetic, disconnected type sensation.
Like, why am I even here?
Why am I here? Yeah, which that's something that I've thought about a lot, and I don't necessarily. I replace, I plug and chug different stories in, but that's an interesting question that I come back to with regularity, like, why am I here?
Why am I here? Interesting. And it probably changes based on how purposeful you feel in that time and space in the world.
Yeah, so a lot of it's, I think, like illusions of progression, because ultimately it's like to have progress, you have to define a destination.
Yeah.
But if you really go 30,000 feet up or 50,000 feet up or, keep on going up with your view, it's like, where the hell is the destination?
Yeah,
Like,
right.
where am I going?
Because your perception's always changing. The higher you get, your perception changes, right?
Yeah.
You're like, whoa, wait. From 10,000 feet, it looked like this. Now at 30,000 feet, it looks like this, and I might want something different,
Yeah. And so I can oscillate in and out, but eventually where that perspective can lead for me is kind of like a sub-healthy nihilistic lens, which again, it's just my operating system. And so it's an interesting experience. I don't really have a point to any of this. I'm just getting excessively introspective. But it's like you can choose your operating system.
Yeah.
So you can live in that place of nihilism, nothing fucking matters, why am I here, everything is pointless, I'm gonna die, everything's just gonna go dark. Or you can download another story, but ultimately I think it all comes back to just choose a story and run with it.
I think we all have that as humans. I mean, do you have that, Anna? Or I do. Like, I'll have days where I'm like, what is this all? What's the point,
Oh my God, all the time.
What's the point of it
Every day. Every day.
Yeah, like you don't see, like, what is my place in the world? What,
Yeah.
what is going on?
You lose sight of like the vision.
You can lose sight because people will ask you, like, what's your goal? What's your purpose? What's your vision? And I think, like, for myself, sometimes I'll think, okay, I want to be the best mom or this or that. But then ultimately it's like my vision is every morning I wake up, I'm like, how can I love at the highest level? Love others and love myself at the highest level. And so that really, for me, makes my purpose so much easier because it's like then I can be present in each moment.
Well, that's why religious people tend to be happier. Married people tend to be happier. You just, whether you're right or wrong, it doesn't really matter because you've really bought into a story. So the idea, if you go out and you're like, okay, cool, like my whole life, everything written in the Bible or the Quran or the Bhagavad Gita or the Upanishad, whatever, like everything in that, like that's my guide. It's just literal truth. It's very convenient. Whereas you have paralysis by analysis when you have too much options, you can just go into this like paralysis state where it's just like, I don't know what to do.
That's why In-N-Out Burger's great. I'm just kidding.
And so Americans, we like, or Western culture spins its wheels in excessive options. And then I think that leads to a lot of anxiety and discomfort because you're like, oh, whereas if you go to a place that has less, which is conversations like completely changing, but that's fine. It almost
you're in
simplifies
Mexico
life.
and it's like Roman Catholicism or
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. You're a Catholic person, and you make tortillas, and you make the best tortillas on the block, and you love your dog, and you love your kids,
and that's like your purpose.
And that's your purpose, and
you're in Guatemala and you make the best black beans ever, and
it's very
like,
convenient.
That's it.
It's one of the most challenging existences is one of like our perceived abundance, I think, like material abundance. It's very challenging to navigate. And it's ironic because the whole world has been sold the story that that's what you want and you will be happy when you arrive at that. But in fact, it's the most complicated, convoluted manner in which to live.
It's so wild to me because my I always had an icky relationship with money. Money was never my goal, right? When I started my business, it wasn't to make the most money. And I remember my first mentor used to always kind of push me to make decisions based on margins and be like, you can make more money doing this, or like fire this person. And I'd be like, no, like I like that person and I actually like doing this better and all that. So I always just stuck to decisions that didn't necessarily make me more money, right? I stuck to my values. And then I started working with Chris Harder recently, and he, in the last year, and he brought up this Napoleon Hill quote that really affected me. And he talked about how in order to make, not need is the wrong word, but in order to make impact, you need wealth, So wealth will allow you and enable you to make a bigger impact on this world. I can either spend 2 hours of my time at a soup kitchen doing manual labor at a soup kitchen, or I could spend 2 of those hours producing and doing something high level in order to help that soup kitchen out so much more.
But then you have to come back and ask, what's the root of why I give a shit about impact in the first place? And it could come from a really healthy place where it's just like, I just, I love being a part of something bigger than this skin bag, and I just genuinely care, and I just have love and compassion. I don't want people to suffer. Or is it coming from a place of I have this insatiable void that I don't know how to fill, and it seems like when I have greater impact, like I'm chasing this carrot.
Yeah, that's true. And it's also, I guess, your definition of impact as well. Like that, I think that means something different. That could mean something like building a school in a third world country, or it could mean like being really kind to the person at the cash register at the grocery store who's having a bad day. We can all kind of, like, we all look at it differently.
But it seems like culturally, it's all just cultural stories again, but a person that has great impact, a Martin Luther King or Gandhi or something like that, it's like, oh, that was a good life.
Right.
Like they did it. They had a good life.
That was a good life.
He did a good job.
I need to do it. I need to do it like that
There's
person.
a statue of his dead body. Like that was a good life. We still see his image.
Yeah.
He's in the history books.
He's in the books.
Yeah.
But he does I don't know what defines a good life.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
That's not necessarily what you'd want. That's not the life that you would want.
Well, me, I don't know. I mean, I think that sounds great to have a statue about me, but that's.
So what's your purpose in life, Aaron?
I wrote it down today. My purpose in life, the story that I'm running as of now, is to live each day as an opportunity to get to a higher level of self-actualization would be a fine word for it. Essentially like trimming away the fat. So any type of mental, emotional, physical imbalances or patterns that don't serve my highest good, this like the potential of this thing called Aaron. If each day I'm trimming those down, I'm becoming a little bit cleaner, sharper version of that. To me, that's a win. And then I'm not sure if this is my ego or not, but along my journey, my intention is to inspire, guide, facilitate, be a part in any capacity that I can of millions of other people's journey towards their own self-expression. So the millions part, that could be a little bit of my own, ego stuff. I think ultimately if I just come back to just this one, then everything else just comes together.
Yeah. I like that. What about you, Anna? What's your purpose?
I think kind of it really aligns with what kind of yours is for me just giving and receiving love to the highest extent. I think that's what it comes down to, and that's I try to root myself in all the things that I do day to day, and I do lose sight of it. You know, it's like I've spoken to both of you about this, but like when you have those like really long, exhausting days, you're not necessarily rooted in that. But that's kind of that's part of the life I'm designing for myself, and I think I have that intention with one the type of I think when it comes to purpose as it has to do with my career, like the type of business that I'm running, the people that are part of that business and the people that we serve. And then also knowing that that is my vehicle and for to allow me to drive into that through like the later parts of my life and be able to be a mom and be able to be a great partner and have this thing that's running like a well-oiled machine. So that's kind of that's rooting myself in that like value is what pushes me to have like those long days right now. Because I know it's like, that's the end goal, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. I love it.
What about you, Tracy?
Well, it's just like moment by moment being able to love at the highest level. So whether I'm on the phone with a Cox Cable person or running a team meeting or whatever it is, I keep going back to in my head, like, what is a way that I can show the most love to others and myself? And you know, obviously that's my perception, right? I'm going to choose based on my perception, but what feels resonant inside of my body. And just focusing on that. I don't know. When I was a kid, I used to have the biggest dreams, but they all came true. So now I'm just like, I don't know.
Now you get to create the next things that you want to call in along those lines because you're a magician.
Yeah, I'm just like trying. It's so funny because I keep trying to create new things in my head, and I'm just like, I really am happy where I am. So I don't know. I mean, obviously the one thing that I really would like is a partner. I really desire to have a partner that I can co-create with, and at the end of the day, someone to really share my heart with and to be able to let them share their heart with me and have like a deep connection. I love connection. I love intimacy and just that depth. Like, it's just so juicy. And I think I have so many girlfriends that I have that with, but there's something so different when it's with a masculine man. Like, there's just, it feels different. Like, it hits different. And so that's one of the parts where I'm like excited for that to come into my life, because I don't think I've ever really had that kind of relationship.
To the extent that, to the depth and the extent that you want.
Yeah.
We all have the same thing. You guys just said it better than me, but it's all just like shedding layers.
Shedding layers. Shedding layers, man. We're like snakes.
Because ultimately behind that, like, I think if a person is, and this isn't my idea either, nor is like probably anything that I've said throughout the day. Most of the things is kind of like picking pieces of different stuff. But if you're truly present in any moment, it's like pretty darn blissful.
Yeah.
You know, so within the shedding of the layers, which is why, you know, going surfing or doing, you know, anything that requires concentration brings you into the present.
Yeah.
And so when a person has so much spaciousness in their life, and they have, you know, all the money that they need, and they have all the different types of energy bars and, you know, protein powders, and just like it's like so much stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it almost creates more space for noise. In a way. You know, whereas when you come into any form of concentration, I think that like that is the root level of the human experience, is actually, you know, love, bliss, contentment, all of those things. But
and I think sorry to interrupt,
no,
what you were
that was
saying
it.
about presence too. That's how I think in order to love to your truest extent, you can't do that unless you're in full presence, right? And I can't speak for all women. I can speak for Tracy and I, because we have spoken about this, but there is something like with what Tracy said about like it's just not the same when you don't have like that partner. There's a sense of safety that I feel like that kind of partnership gives us in order to allow us to be present. Right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's just a sense of like, like I'm good, I'm fine, you know. And I think that's been what we've been trying to like give to each other, and also give within ourselves, like that safety to be in that fullest expression of like the present moment.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it is. There's just something about I've never felt more safe and thus more present unless I've been in a partnership. You know, and I don't want that. I don't want to ever depend on that, but that just, I don't know.
It's like a child having a stable home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a really similar thing. So if there's instability at home, then it's hard to venture out because you don't have like resources to come back
well,
to.
Well, you're always more powerful when you have a partner in life, like somebody you can lean on. Like, you know, you've got two hands and say they're tied up, and someone else is able to lend you a hand at that moment. Like that's always it's always a positive.
I was gonna agree with you, Tracy. I was so gonna agree with you, and that's what I always thought that was true. But like, when I went through my breakup earlier this year, like my business went up 5x after. Because I think for me personally, I think I felt after that I was like I don't want to say I need to take care of myself, but like I was like I need to shine. Yeah, I need to take care of myself, and I had my vision of this lifestyle. Why the fuck can't I give that to myself? Mm-hmm. And why can't I like shine as bright as I want to? Like kind of going back to like neutralizing and being myself at my fullest. That's what I've spent the last few months doing, and that's really then there's a positive correlation between that and like the way my business has grown up, you know?
Yeah.
So that's a story, because that's a story that I had as well, you know, and even as you said it, I was like, that's not necessarily true, but I could see that it is a driver for sure.
But then business isn't the only indicator of well-being. You know, has there been other, and your previous partner obviously like wasn't the right person for you, so, you know, or you'd still be together. So perhaps that could have been like a version of shedding that really just truly does make you a more inspired version of yourself.
Yeah.
But I'm the same as her. Like when I go through a breakup, everything in my life, like business wise, usually I create all these new things.
Yeah, you'd lean into
so much. I go into so much creation space.
Yes.
Totally.
And it almost feels like, because there's like, when you're standing on fire, you don't want to stand there. You want to move.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
and
the
so
busyness.
when you're
it's
in
the
so much
busyness
pain,
that takes you away from being present too, Trace.
Yeah. When you're in so much, well, I know for me, when I'm in so much pain, it's like, I need to create.
Yeah.
That just drives me to create. Some people, when they're in pain, they like to watch Netflix and sit in their pajamas, and that feels really good. For me, I can't stop. I need to work out. I need to be creating. I need to be moving. I'm like, and it's to like the nth degree. I'm always that way. That's my personality.
Yeah.
But it just goes 10x.
And isn't it fucked up too? Because like for me, I was in the most pain I've ever been in my entire life, but everyone was like, you're killing it. You look great. Your business is good. And I'm just like dying on the inside.
Because of the relationship?
Huh?
Because of the relationship?
Yeah.
Was the ending?
Yeah.
How long were you dying?
Oh my gosh. 9 months? 10 months?
You were dying on the inside for 10 months?
Yeah.
Didn't you just break up 10 months ago?
Yeah.
She's like, honestly, I'm still dying right now.
I'm
just
still
not
dying
noticing
What
this.
is what are you dying about?
It has nothing to do with my old partner. It has all to do with like just feelings of like abandonment, and also just like my nervous system, because when I love so hard, and it's really difficult for me to not have that. It's like, yeah, it's difficult for me to not have that. And then also safety. So nothing to do with whether or not I was happy, because I wasn't. I was safe. And I remember right after we broke up, it was like a couple weeks later, when I was like in the thick of it, I got in a car accident. And it was like that, what you were saying about like kids and having a stable home. It's like I got in the car accident. My first instinct was I don't have anybody to call. So it was constantly this feeling of like, oh my God, what happens if shit hits the fan? I have nobody. It's just me. But I like called Tracy, and she happened to be staying at my house, and she showed the fuck up, took care of me, gave me so much love. And that was such a message. And you were such an angel through that, because you were like the universe showing me like, yo girl, you don't need that. You don't need that person to give you that. You have that. You have that with so many people that love you. And my journey the past few months has been recognizing that and feeling that within myself, you know?
You're always protected. You're always like, it's always there.
Do you feel like you're in a place, if that sensation or inclination to maybe compensate to feel safe and 5x your business and do all of those like more like masculine characteristics, would that be kind of like the raft analogy? You like built a raft to get across a river because you felt uncomfortable. Would that fit or not really?
Kind of.
There was like a river to cross, and you kind of invested in that. Maybe that doesn't fit.
Yeah, it kind of does.
What do you feel? What would it take to feel safe? The same question I asked you before.
I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out. I think a lot of that's somatic for me too. It's in my body. It's the way I hold my body. Like I have this just a sense of like, I can't describe it. There's a lot, but I feel like for me a lot of it's ancestral too. Just because I was born in a war zone, and there is like that feeling of like I crave safety, I think, a lot more than other people maybe. Yeah. Just because of that, because of my lineage and all that. But I don't know.
Have you gone back there?
Absolutely not.
All right.
No. I will one day when I have something to contribute, but right now just like
I wonder if there could be some value in
feel like healing. Yeah.
I wonder.
Yeah, probably.
I don't know.
I think it's so funny how you meet people, and like how you were saying safety was just paramount for you. How we all have, like, if you go through words, there's words that really resonate with you that just like, yes, this is what I want, you know? Mm-hmm. Like mine is like fiercely protected. Like I just want to know that there's a man out there that wants to like just protect me and my family. Like
you want to be adored and cherished. I think those are big ones for you too.
Yeah, I do love it when someone, like a man, just like adores you. Just like, oh, you're amazing, you know? But I think like the fiercely protected is like, and then it's like, where does that come from? Then you go back to like when you're a child and you think about like, oh, it kind of makes sense how I feel this way or why this is so important, you know? So when you ask certain people, you know, I think some people don't even know. That's why it's fun to have. I have this book of like just words. It's fun just to have people pick out, okay, what really resonates with you? What do you most desire? What do you most want? And many people are very different. And then you go back and it's like just understanding. When they understand why they desire that, it can be very cathartic. It can be very healing. So maybe ask yourself that.
Have you had any early childhood stuff that you've revisited that have been helpful to open you up to new parts of yourself that you didn't realize you had access to?
I mean, I think it's always helpful in therapy, you know, to share your story and then have somebody see something and ask you different questions. So therapy's been really helpful. But yeah, I mean, we look at our primary relationships, like, you know, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband and wife, whatever it is. We look at those main relationships and then we look at the trauma that we're having there. And a lot of times it mirrors the trauma that we had as a child that we may not have even realized. Yeah, it's very similar. The way we show up in this relationship has a lot to do with the way that maybe our parents showed up for each other, and now we're trying to heal that, or, you know, we're mimicking these things, and or the things that we didn't even realize. Like, my parents are some of the most loving people. Any of my friends that meet them, they're like, they remind me of what Mother Teresa would have been like. I know that people have things to say about Mother Teresa, but the image that we have of Mother Teresa, like that, seriously, like my parents, like their life was full of service. And I watched them and it was so beautiful and I learned so much from them. And I didn't realize till later on in life after I got divorced that every child's going to have trauma because no parent's perfect, right? Even as much as they try and as loving as they are. My trauma was that my parents were missionaries and they were always giving. And I was always afraid, like we didn't know sometimes if what we were going to eat for dinner, like maybe there wasn't food in the cupboard or, you know, like most of the time there was, but there was always trying to figure stuff out, or like my clothes came from the missionary closet where it was like always hand-me-downs. It'd be just like the Goodwill coming, you know, and like you just sift through the clothes, see what's going to fit you and what you can have. And to me, it didn't matter. I was always like excited about that. It didn't feel like trauma as a child. And I don't even like using that word trauma, but as I got older, I realized that's why like fiercely protected and taken care of is just like when I met my ex-husband, it was so, I felt so safe with him because he was financially secure, not flashy or showy like a lot of the other guys, but very like he loved to give, but he was also very grounded and like, here's our home. And, you know, he had his financial situation just very grounded and set up, and he would take me to dinner, and like it just felt solid, like in a way that I didn't have as a child, you know? And so it felt like that was very healing, and that was something that I enjoyed. So I noticed that we have these patterns that we like that do come from being a kid, even though it doesn't feel like it's trauma as a child. Like later on, you're like, okay, well, maybe that was something that shaped me, or it was hard that I didn't even realize.
Do you feel like there's anything in your life that you don't have gratitude for, or something that would still be in like the trauma bucket? Because trauma is a story. It's not. It would. My sense or my feeling be something's only traumatic as long as it's like
That's the
a
story.
wound.
It's a perception thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Trauma. I mean, some people have some
That's what I was
serious
saying. I don't
trauma,
know if
but
that's the word, but
well, the word has meaning and value, and it probably gets overused. But something would only be traumatic for as long as your relationship to that incident is it's still an open wound. You know, but if you can come to a point where you're like, nope, it's fully scabbed up, healed, scarred up, we got massaged, it's all myofascial release, like there's not trauma, there's no trauma. You know, now it just is. You know, it's just a bunch of isness on my leg.
And then there's also the gratitude you can have for everybody that rubs salt on that wound too. Because that's what makes you recognize it in order to like let it fully heal.
you recognize that it's there. I know. That's so true. I don't know. Lots of good questions. These are questions that we can all ask ourselves, you know, after you guys are done listening to this podcast. Good questions to ask yourselves, you know, because like you said, Erin, it just really comes back to the story we're telling ourselves, the narrative that we have, and then asking ourselves why we chose that narrative. I ask myself that often. Why am I choosing this narrative? Why I get to write the story? Why am I writing the story this way? And there is some reason why we attach ourselves to certain stories. It feels safe or it feels better. We want to feel a certain way. And maybe, you know, even the pain, sometimes we want to feel that pain for some reason. I don't know why. But asking ourselves, like, why am I creating this story?
Yeah. And then
around this.
And also like the worst, I don't know who said this, but the worst thing that could happen would be nothing at all. You know, so I think again it's possible to come to a place of complete gratitude for all of the wind that's come through your trees in your lifetime. Like if a tree doesn't get enough wind, then it would just, you know, atrophy and fall over and be all shit. You know, so it is those storms like literally like it's like hypertrophy on a tree level. Like it's strengthening the
Totally. Well, like I think like I was saying how I used to get my clothes from the missionary bags, and like, you know, it was very minimal. I used to take my water to school in a mayonnaise jar, you know. It's like it wasn't like the other kids that had the squeezy bottles and all. Like I was the only kid with the mayonnaise jar and the beans and rice and like the secondhand shoes. But the thing is that's so cool. Every day I wake up in this house, there isn't a day that goes by that I'm like, whoa, I get to live here. When I go into my closet and see my clothes, I'm like, I get to wear these, like, and pick this. Like, I'm like a child every single day.
You go to your water bottles and you're like, wow, this isn't a mayonnaise jar anymore.
Exactly. I get the crystal now, like
Exactly.
the crystal restructured, like
Shaman
$3,000 gold plated. You know,
but does that make you any happier than having
No,
like the
'cause
love of a family with the mayonnaise?
I was just as happy then. It's not that I wasn't happy, right? But I did see the things that I was excited to create in my life. I saw other people's lives. Like being a missionary, we got to go to a lot of people's houses that had wealth, and they'd invite us to their house, and I used to get inspired by them. Like, wow, I've never seen something like this before, like a house like this, or a dinner like this, or china like this, you know. And it was like, I could do this too. And so it always inspired me to think what I wanted to create in my life. And I was always excited about it.
To go back to that, it's like I felt like in all the examples that you just brought up, you love hosting, you love creating a vibe, you love getting people together. So it's almost like you reverse engineered a life that would create that for you, right?
Yeah.
So you created all these things like the crystal and the home, the like fine dining utensils in the homes and all the things, because it's not for you, Trace. It's because you love and you have that heart for hosting people and sharing it with other people. So that's why I feel like it was just gifted to you so readily by the universe, you know, because you wanted it with such integrity.
Aww.
What's the other Bible thing? The meek shall inherit the earth.
The meek?
The meek. The meek shall inherit the earth.
Yes, the meek. Yeah.
I think it's like generation skips, wealth skips a generation. You know, like growing up in that scenario, I think it's the best possible thing that can happen to someone. If you're an immigrant or, you know, any of that, it's like those people are actually the lucky ones, which is such a funny thing. I remember being in high school or middle school or whatever, you know, and always wanting to be like a cool kid. But you really, it's like you don't want to peak too early. Like you want to be kind of fat and shitty and ugly.
Really?
In my opinion.
It's the contrast that allows you to
Really want to.
appreciate.
You want to be like an
This
Oompa
is
Loompa at some point in your life.
Okay,
or like
this is
be
true.
raised
Very
with a silver
important.
spoon or all that. I
It's
agree.
the hardest scenario. It actually is. Whatever you. It's like whatever you think the opposite. I think the hardest scenario for a person to be in is to not grow up with some form of handicap, in a way, because you don't get to have that
It was a
compassion and
complete
empathy and that
blessing.
appreciation that you have now when you go in your closet. The only reason you have that is because you grew up with the man.
I
who's
know.
drunk.
I know the contrast. You know, and
Maybe not
it
the
is.
only reason, but it's, you know, it's definitely.
It's a part of it. Yeah, and I'm so thankful for the way I grew up, and I'm also thankful to realize too that we grew up with so little, you know, so little in terms of things on this earth that you could have, but there was so much love in my house that I got to see. I was a very happy child. Like I really had a great childhood, and to realize that you can be really happy without having so many physical things around you. It's like where you are in your heart, where you are in your spirit.
That's why I think a lot
where
of
you are in
like
your story.
the biohacking health sphere is like kind of misguiding, because it can be alienating to people who don't have, you know, an extra 10 grand to spend on an infrared sauna or something. You know, because you get sold this story that like I will be the best version of myself when I have all of this shit, but it's never about the shit. Like it's never about the thing. Like the root of everything is what's the intention, like what's the vibe.
Yeah.
You know, so was there love in the house?
Yeah.
And if there was love in the house, you can mayonnaise jars, crystal like it doesn't matter. Was there love in the house?
Right, because I could have this beautiful home that I have now, and if there wasn't love in it, it would just be a beautiful
It would be
home.
shit. It would be more.
right?
It would actually be much worse, because you have all this space, and then that becomes a reminder that there's no one in my life that I
no one to
love or
share
loves
it
me.
with. Yeah.
And so if you're actually in a one-bedroom apartment, it's easier to be lonely,
That's
because
an
you're like, oh,
interesting
this is
point.
just for me.
Just me.
Just
But if
me.
you're in a big house, oh god, there's nothing worse.
Yeah. So it's good, the contrasts. So the moral of the story today is. All right, Aaron, do you have any jokes you want to leave us with? Or?
Oh, I got nothing.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Well, this was good. We might have to break this up into 2 parts. This was like an hour and 45 minutes. This is the longest podcast I've ever done. So
We could have kept going too.
well, we could have kept going. We have these conversations at my house all the time by the fire pit, and like Lorelai and I, or you and I, will be like, we should have recorded
I
that. That
know.
was so good. You know, it was so juicy. So I'm glad we got to do this, and thank you, Aaron, for driving down to be a part of this and give us the male perspective. You know, it's just awesome.
Honored to be a part of it.
Honored to share in this. All right, you guys, thank you so much.